I had a big tidy up in the garage today, or yesterday, and moved the machine to where it's going to be finally, approximately there. So the limit switches, the normally closed ones, arrived, and I've just been wiring those up after much confusion. I actually went back and forwards between these and the old ones that I had, thinking that the old ones were actually the right ones. I changed my mind about twice and eventually came to the conclusion that the new ones that I got, the normally closed ones, are correct. So they're wired up in series, so the positive voltage from the 24 volts is going to both of them the same, and then the ground from the 24 volts goes to one of them, and then for the second one the ground is being obtained from the output of the first one. So if I actually switch this one here, it switches both of them off because the left one is providing the ground for the right one, and if I turn the right one off, just the right one goes off. That I think has given me exactly what I want, and I've been fiddling around with the HAL setup over here. So if I just show you my limit switch, we're just looking at the X at the moment, so you can see that there. There's some other kind of a display up there that I'm not too familiar with, arrow going left, not sure what that is. So I'm not going to use this for homing, it's just going to be limit switches, I think. Or maybe, I'll figure that out later. Anyway, it seems to be working, and the normally open switches that I had would have been just fine to do that as well. But the problem with the normally open ones is that if I just simulate a wire break by unplugging the wire here and see what we get there, we'll see that it triggers the limit switch on the X as well if I plug it back in. Now it's okay. And that was not possible as far as I could tell with the normally open switches. So I'm glad I did get these ones after all. And it's also, I like these ones because when they're powered on in the normal state, like not triggered, the light is on. So it lets you visually see that they're on and detecting and everything's running. Okay, that looks good. So that's the last of the limit switches on there now. All actually is done. Up here it looks nice and tidy because they were sort of planned from the beginning, like I had these in my CAD design, these holes here. And I was able to use just some screws for those. They kind of work mostly alright, but I think it's a little bit lacking in ferrous material here, because sometimes you get a problem where it's like right on the edge, and if you look at the HAL scope in Linux CNC, you can see that the scope's sort of oscillating a little bit between on and off, and if you look at the light on the back, it's bright at the moment, but it looks like it's half strength, like it's dim. So I think that's just a matter of this not being much iron material, and also coming from the side maybe I think is not so good, as coming directly onto it might be better, I think. Unfortunately I've done that in all cases. I kind of like the fact that if it goes a little bit too far, it's not actually going to smash into the limit switch, like it's not heading towards it to hit it. Kind of prefer it that way. Down here, not quite so tidy. I machined a couple of little bracket bits that I've stuck on there like that to hold these limit switches, and again I didn't really want the iron material to be coming like into the limit switch if it goes too far. So for this one as well, I've made it just sort of go across the top. It's not so tidy because, yeah, I hadn't really thought about how this was going to work, but it's actually going to be quite nice, I think. It's not taking up too much space. The one at the other end, down there, this one, actually it's worse than I thought. It's that cable's brushing right on there. So I'll have to improve that, maybe just put a block of foam or something to hold it a little bit further away so it's not actually touching on there. Okay, all ready to start. Check out this toolpath. Looks pretty cool. So you're going to need that vacuum cleaner right away. Okay, that's the first pass done there. There was quite a bit of dust, but not like, wasn't terrible. It was about, you can see that's where I have not vacuumed on that side. It was kind of like that, at least around the bottom of the spindle. A little bit on here, but it wasn't too bad actually. The surface seems to be a lot rougher than my test bit that I did. So here's where I did the testing, same settings on there. And that was quite nice and smooth, so that's why I decided to go with those settings. But then when I was doing this one, for some reason, it just didn't seem to be quite the same. So I'm not sure what's up with that. Well, that's not very smooth either. What's happening? That's my test piece. That's pretty good, right? That's really rough on this one. Oh, what? Well, I got this far through the job. It's like 20 something minutes, and then the spindle just started to slow right down and eventually just stopped. So I'm not sure what's up with that. It's there's no errors or anything on here, so oh, I turned it off, sorry. Yeah, well, there was no errors on it, so I don't know what the hell's going on. Should be able to run for more than 20 minutes, even if it does have a bit of insulation on it. Well, I don't know what's going on here, but this spindle's not even working at all now. So if I tell it to start, like this, see, 10,000, down here, the value is being received from Linux CNC. The spindle doesn't spin, what? Don't tell me it's broken. Well, after a few hours of dicking around trying to figure out what's going on here, yellow cable there, that's fine. Oh, what? Red's not connected? Black's not connected? So the red and the black, the spindle cable's just not even connected somehow. The listing on AliExpress for this cable actually mentioned drag chains specifically as a good use case for this cable, so I'm really quite disappointed in it that it just didn't really seem to handle it. So what I'm going to do now is chop it at various locations and see if I can figure out where the breakage has occurred, and I'm kind of suspicious that it might be in here because this is the only bit where it's really been bending a lot, and it wasn't like this originally when I had the MDF gantry on. I didn't have it like this. I wasn't using this drag chain. I had it coming over the top there like that, didn't I? But since I made the aluminium one, I've been using this drag chain like that, so I suspect that somewhere in here is the problem, and that this cable that I'm using just really not made to be bent at all, which is really quite disappointing. I might have to try and find something completely different. Yep, that seems to be the problem. I was just took a little cut out of here, and sure enough, between here and the spindle, there's no connection. So it seems like this is definitely the problem, this bending here. Okay, so that long piece there, I can actually reuse that, so I won't have to do that all over again. I'll just have to replicate on this end that bit there, so that's not too much work. And I know I've already said it twice, but I'll say it again. I'm really disappointed in that, because if it wasn't for this, I would have happily recommended this to people, because it just feels really nice. The price was pretty decent, and I'll show you in a minute. There's just, I might have showed you in one of my previous videos actually. There's many layers of like shielding, and there's like a plastic thing, and then there's paper, and then there's the braiding. It just feels like a really nice quality product, but maybe there's like a minimum radius that you can bend it without it causing problems. Perhaps that's part of the spec, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, look how much of that I've bought now that I don't really want to use. Okay, we're back in business, many hours behind the expected finish time. And I just put the cable for the spindle over there like that. That's how I had it before, I think. So it's bending as little as it possibly can, and underneath it's just going dangling like that. So the cable is about as short as it could possibly be too, which is probably a good thing. Okay, it's next morning now, and we managed to get through the end of that job without any further problems, at least no further problems from the spindle. I did have a problem with the grub screws inside that pulley there. One of them had come almost completely out, like it was just teetering on the edge, and any further out it would have fallen on the floor. And the other one then wasn't able to hold it properly, so it was coming a bit loose, and unfortunately in the y-axis here we lost some steps. So it starts off being about that far away from, so this is the first pass there, and then the second pass is about that far apart. And then over here you can see it sort of gradually gets a little bit thinner. This is the point where I restarted the job, and I was quite pleased with myself for finding in Linux CNC there's a like run from here, so you can pick a specific line of G-code and just start the program from there. So that's what I did, and I was quite pleased with myself until it got over to here, and I was looking at it thinking, hey, wait a minute, this isn't really right, because it wasn't, it was going too far south, too far that way, and it wasn't going far enough in that direction there, so it's a little bit different. So I stopped the program at that point there, and I figured out what it was, tightened up that grub screw, or both of them, tightened all the grub screws actually, just in case any of the other ones were going to do that, and then I rehomed it and started from here again, or at least I thought it was going to start from here, but the point that I'd picked to start from was actually on the top edge, so it started moving over there, and I was looking at it, but my depth perception wasn't quite good enough to see that it was going to hit there. So it just drove into there on the way to there, and yes, I stopped it, put it here, and then started the program with that same coordinate, and then reran it all the way to the rest, to the other end. So now just got to flip it over and do the other side. Overall, it's a pretty decent job, although I'm just wondering why my test piece that I did yesterday looks so much smoother. I think I might have mentioned this already, but this is 1.5mm step over, there's 1.2mm step over, and this here is 1.5 as well, I think, but for some reason it just doesn't really feel as smooth. It's kind of rough feeling. It's really strange. And also this as well, if you compare the difference in these, that there and these two here, oh, there's two tests there, but they're both kind of the same settings as that, but for some reason it's way rougher. I'm not really sure what happened there, but that is a rough pass, so I guess it doesn't matter. Anyway, this wing that I'm making here, as I'm looking at it now, it looks quite a bit smaller than I had imagined. I was just going on the wingspan, so it's 820mm wingspan. So that's about the same as the S800 Sky Shadow, or whatever that black one was called that I had. And also I guess it's the same as the Wing Z84 approximately. But it just looks so much smaller, and I think the reason is probably because of this quite strong taper that it has going down to pretty much nothing at about here. And both the Wing and the S800, they start off in the middle kind of similar, but the taper at the wing tip is not so much, so they come down to about they still have about this much cord at the tip, I think, so that's why it looks so small. And it also seems to be very small vertically, like from the midpoint there at the bottom of that groove is like the front of the wing cord, like the middle line, and it's only about sort of 12 to 15 millimeters above that at the highest point here. So that means the other side's only going to be about 18 millimeters for a total of 30 millimeters thickness. So it's going to be very thin, and it's probably not going to be practical to put a battery or any kind of wiring inside there. So it's looking like I might never actually fly this, and if I do, it's going to have to be so light that in any kind of wind at all it'll be useless, other than on a perfectly calm day. But anyway, it'll be good for practice and getting to know Fusion 360 and double-sided machining. With those limit switches that I put on there, the main reason I put them on there was to avoid crashes like driving off the edge of the table, or especially off here, because you could actually slide the rails or the carriages right off. That was the main thing I wanted to avoid. But I've since realized that it's also very useful for homing, because those position sensors are quite repeatable. And now, after getting used to working in different coordinate systems, so the G54 ones there is the offset from the home position where the 0 on the work piece is. So you've got machine position and work position. And in the past this has been unfamiliar for me, because my little machine over there, I didn't have any homing switches. And oh, look at all that stuff cluttering it up. Haven't been using it, you can see. Yeah, but the machine position and the work position on there is the same all the time. So after a little bit of initial confusion about how to use those properly, I became very happy with the way it works, because for one thing, you can have a machine position where you can say, just using the MDI tab in Linux CNC, just get out of my way to within like 5 millimeters of the limit switches, and that lets me, do something down here. And that's a machine position, of course. The other nice thing is that because this G54 offset here is saved by Linux CNC when you turn it off, you can go away, like turn everything off and come back the next morning as I just did, and then when you home the machine, because it's so repeatable, I know that all of the positioning that I had for this job yesterday on the underside is going to be in just the right place now, and I don't have to do any fiddling around with it. At least with X and Y, I don't have to fiddle around with the positioning to get it in the right place again. It's really nice. And the other thing it lets you do is, now there's a button here called Touch Off. So Home All, if I just click that, will, it's probably going to ask if I want to do it again. Where's my mouse? There we go. So that will do this. And that just brings everything to the limit switches and then moves them inward by, I think, 5 millimeters. So that's like the machine 0 position. And then when I do touch off now, I can just type in whatever value I want the X and the Y to think it is in the work position, which is one thing I haven't been able to do until I got those limit switches in there. Alright, that's the roughing of the top side done. This one's cutting a little deeper. It's cutting about 2/3 of the way in instead of 1/3. Everything went okay, although I'm noticing here that it's very, very rough looking. It's depends a little bit which way it's moving, I think, because this was doing both climb and conventional directions. And some of them are, yeah, it looks a lot rougher than my test piece. Okay, so that's the last operation done, and that went off without any problems, although again the surface finish is a lot rougher than I was hoping for. I mean, you're going to sand it anyway, but every time you sand it, or the more you sand it, the more you lose the shape that you were trying to get from the computer design. And I also noticed that one of my roughing passes here, it wasn't cutting very well. I think it was kind of squashing the foam more than cutting it, so you can see that that's come through here. Even though there's like a 1mm stock to leave setting there, it's still managed to squash more than 1mm down, so you can see a little bit of a line there, and over here too slightly. Yeah, overall I'm getting the feeling that this style of construction is not going to be very suitable if you have thin pieces like this, like a trailing edge, exactly what I'm doing. For one thing, it's a little bit precarious to hold it, and that's why I've got these tabs here, quite a few of them along here that seem to work okay. But the problem is that you have to be very careful with your vertical positioning, because a very small difference in vertical height will make a big difference to where this edge ends up. And also, because it gets very thin there, you can see there's some chunks. It's not a very straight, like there's another bit missing. It's not very straight. Well, it's straight enough, but it's not as straight as you would get with a hot wire cut. I mean, plus when you hot wire cut, the fact that you're slightly melting the foam on the surface means that the surface of the foam from the hot wire cutter is a little bit stronger. This is quite soft and fuzzy and feels weak compared to what you'd get from a hot wire cut surface. So yeah, I'm just sort of thinking, maybe what you could do is, instead of trying to make it a razor thin trailing edge like I've done with this design, just flatten off the trailing edge. Like, don't make it thin, make it like a slightly thick trailing edge. That would be fine. Yeah, so for things like wings with thin trailing edges, this might not be the greatest way to do things, but for something that's a bit more rounded like a fuselage, I think this will be a great way to go. So I did a bit of sanding on that, and it turned out alright in areas like this where it's thicker and rounder, but on the trailing edge again there's kind of a problem. It starts to rip out easily like that, and it doesn't sand very well in general, and I think the reason is because you've got all these grooves, or ridges and then a groove, and you're trying to take the top off the ridge, but it feels like maybe what's happening is the ridge, instead of getting cut by the sandpaper nicely, it sort of squashes down into the ridge next to it. So you have to press harder than you normally would to get anything done, and that's not very good when you're trying to be careful with this frail edge along here. So overall it seems like it's just not really as convenient as a hot wire cut wing. Of course, you can't get a shape like this with a hot wire cut. That's the trade-off. And in particular these bits here, I just had to pretty much leave them alone because the grooves cut into the wing quite a significant amount there, and I think if I sanded on that too much it would just break right off. So yeah, it's a compromise, isn't it? Well, this is weird. I was doing another cut here, same settings, same tool and everything, except this one is pretty decently smooth, the surface finish. It's only slightly rougher than my test piece that I did the day before, so that's that. And then we've got this. This bit here is slightly rougher. All the rest of it's about the same as the test piece that I did before. So, I don't know, maybe that other piece of foam that I was using just before was slightly different somehow. So, maybe you just can't expect all this foam to be of the same density. Well, this is interesting. I'm doing the finishing pass for that now, and the finishing pass is also way smoother than the one that I just did before. So the only difference is that I'm using 1mm step over here instead of 1.2mm step over, so it's not that much different, it's just a little bit tighter, but look at the difference. But I don't... Sorry, it's probably a bit loud. I don't even need to sand that. That's going to be great. Much less work to fix it later. So the only difference is that this piece here that I was using before is 5 centimeters thick, and the new one is 3 centimeters thick. Other than that, it's the same brand and the same type of board and everything, so I can't really see any other, or any reason or any way to tell them apart other than that. But yeah, this is a little bit annoying because it's kind of pot luck now, isn't it? You go to the shop and you buy one, you don't know whether you're going to get one that's going to turn out nice like this one, or turn out kind of ridgy and groovy like the other one was. Well, look at this, hey! It's very nice this time. It's beautiful. No sanding required. I can just put fiberglass straight on there. All the edges are nice and crisp. You can see the grooves there still, but they're really nothing to worry about. Definitely don't need to sand it. I guess my faith has been restored in this method a little bit, and might actually see me doing more of this in future. If I can get it to work out like this every time, that'd be nice. Oh boy. So that job's finished there, and it looks absolutely fantastic. So when the spindle doesn't stop in the middle of the job, and the pulleys don't slip, and the foam is a nice kind of a foam, I mean, it really, really looks good. That doesn't need any further preparation, other than getting rid of these holding tabs, of course. And this bit here, oh, let's have a look at this. Let's see if I can just break that off. Okay, that's still not super great. It's a little bit shorter than it's supposed to be. You can see the width of the column, the vertical column there is where the end of the trailing edge should finish. So it's a little bit shorter than it should be. And I actually gave it a 0.5 millimeter extra thickness, like I didn't zero it perfectly. I zeroed it, but then I lifted it another 0.5 millimeter. Now if I hadn't done that, it would have been even shorter there. But anyway, yeah, that's definitely worth exploring more, doing more experiments with machining of foam, at least with the 3 centimeter thick slabs anyway. They seem to be pretty good so far.
Okay, so I put some fiberglass on this, and that increased the weight from 60 grams to 170 grams. So that's 110 grams of glass and resin. I'm guessing about 100 grams of resin and 10 grams of glass or so. So it really soaked up a lot more resin than it would have if it was nice and smooth foam. And I just very quickly slapped some electronics on, not expecting too much, but there's 1 week of rain in the weather forecast coming up, so thought I might give it a try at least. Alright, let's just throw it, see what happens. Awesome. I think it's just too heavy at that speed. There we go. Oh, it's got no yaw stability whatsoever. Funny that. No vertical surfaces, what do you know? Nah. Okay, let's see if we can do any better with a little bit of vertical stabilizer. Unfortunately it's heavier now because I had to put more weight on the front to balance that out. Hey, that was alright. Yeah, it'll fly right, it just needs more speed. I just can't get it in these conditions with no motor. Okay, I put a little 40mm EDF on there. I've never used EDFs before. They always just put me off with their inefficiency, but it seemed like a good fit for this one, and I have had this sitting around for about a year, so might as well do something with it. I don't know how this battery's going to hold up, and it's only at storage charge, but here goes. Oh, we almost had a bit of something going there. Okay, it's very wobbly, and I almost can't control it, but I just barely can. Oh, okay, so it needs way more speed than I thought to keep in the air at all, and that's not keeping in the air with any stability. And I'm pretty sure that battery was having a real hard time with that. So that's as far as I'm going to take it today. Needs to be at least 50 grams lighter, I'd say. So all things considered, with that much resin on there, like there's about twice as much resin on here as there would have been if I had a smoother foam surface to start with, I think. So it could have actually been 50 grams lighter, which would make it around about 250 grams, which is kind of an important number for some people, I suppose. So yeah, if that had have had the fin on the back, actually maybe I should do that. I'll charge this battery up and I'll put the fin on the back again, or two slightly smaller ones, and give that another try, because it wasn't too bad. I could sort of control it and almost bring it back to me. Okay, I charged the battery and I put on what is probably the bare minimum of vertical surface. Might be a slight bit tail heavy now, but let's see what happens. It's full throttle. It's flying pretty nicely though now. That's probably pulling about 20 amps, and that battery is at 800 milliamp hour. So how many C is that? A lot. I don't think it's... I can't go much slower than that either, unfortunately. Okay, so it's about 90% throttle. It's flying quite nicely, but it just feels very heavy. Like, I know as soon as I let off the throttle, I'll just see if I can do one low pass for coolness for the viewers. Maybe one more. That wasn't very good. Don't go too far away. No, wrong side of me. Oh, watch out for the trees! Okay, we're losing power now. So I'm just going to have to come in and land it. Yeah, it's just too heavy. Oh well. Yeah, it's just too heavy. Stability is actually pretty good, but it's no good without some vertical surface. So I'm a little surprised about that, because the this wing, by the way, is the same as the KFM2 airfoil that I made a while ago, that flew very well with or without any vertical stabilizers. So this one, yeah, I thought it would do a little bit better with no vertical stabilizers. Mind you, it's not very well set up here with all this clobber on the front. It's just not a very good scale, I think. It's just too small and too heavy with all that resin on there. But it did fly, and it was easy to control, so I might scale this up, because now I can make half of one of these at the double scale. So this is 50% scale of my original plan. Anyway, I think that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching.